In the past, MMOs were regarded as the godfathers of games. They were the peak
True.
of what developers could accomplish. Even though, looking back, that's a fairly subjective thing to say. Everyone knew MMOs had the power to create cult following, but
That is 100% true. A lot of MMOs did create cult followings, but let's be real here. Most old MMO cult followings is just a bunch of boomers who cannot let go of the past because the past always seems a lot better than the now when you have problems, bills to pay, and whatnot. And that's why they so desperately cling to the past and saying, oh, back in my day, games were so much better. That's not even true for the most part.
also everyone knew making MMOs was hard. On average, an MMO has to spend at least 6 years in the baking before it can get anywhere
That's
near being
a
good.
long time.
But that didn't stop companies from jumping onto the bandwagon anyway.
Hell
and
yeah.
soon we could see dozens of new MMOs, all releasing in 2008, all being called the WoW killers.
World of Warcraft killed itself. It didn't actually need any help. It just did it to itself, and now it's reaping the consequences.
Spoiler alert, none of them did that. And unfortunately, we can feel the ripple effects even now. It got to a point where every time a new MMO is announced, we all think the same thing. Oh. Anyway, when you're working on an MMO, you have to respect 3 pillars. Gameplay is king,
True.
social interactions matter, and the world setting is important.
Social interactions is so misunderstood nowadays. A lot of people, for example, say that MMOs should not have things like Raid Finder, Dungeon Finder, and all of those things because it destroys social interaction. That's such a bad take most of the part. Games should have systems in them. Games should have things that encourage social interaction. A lot of people think that, convenience things like Raid and Dungeon Finders destroy social interaction. Now that is true to an extent, but games in reality should incentivize people to actually make these social interactions for one or another reason.
When Riot announced their MMO, it became clear that 2 of the pillars are being respected, and the third
That's
one
good.
is already done. When it comes to the gameplay, it is currently in the hands of Ghostcrawler, someone who's been working on WoW during its best times, and someone who got a
I don't know how to feel about that. Is that good? Is that bad?
reputation for hating boomkins and loving mages.
Okay, he hates boomkins. Yeah, he's our guy, boys. He is definitely one of us.
When it comes to the social interactions, it is a dance between the developers and the players. A dev can guide players towards social interactions.
Boys, let me tell you something about a dead guiding the social interactions. When World of Warcraft Classic came out, my first Veiling Caverns took roughly 1.5 hours because of the stupid boomers who did not know where to go, how to tank, how to DPS, and how to goddamn heal. And you know what was my second interaction? Arati Highlands, or whatever that zone is called. There's this giant spider elite that literally requires a 5-people group to deal with. And I needed that for a quest. So I started spamming global chat that if someone helps me kill that stupid spider, I will give them 40 gold. I didn't give them 40 gold. But that's not the irony of this story. The irony of that story is after I got to level 60 and joined the guild that I absolutely enjoyed for an extremely long period, pretty much for the whole of Classic, before the Burning Crusade. The irony was that guy, that warlock who helped me kill that stupid spider, and who I did not pay, just logged out and put him on ignore, was a part of my new guild. So I ended up paying him that 40 gold because he remembered me. Worst experience ever. You see, that's the kind of social interaction you want in the game. You want situations like that.
Or they can annihilate them. And after that, the players usually find their own fun inside the MMO. From that point on, the devs should do everything in their power to support the players having fun in their own way. And
I don't think anyone wants people to have fun, and no, that's just strong, Necrid. That is just absolutely objectively wrong.
the players having fun in their own way. And finally, when it comes to the world of an MMO, in Riot's case, it's done. And
it's gonna be amazing. I don't know a lot of League of Legends lore. Honestly, all the lore I know is from Necrid. I just binge watch his lore videos at some certain time in my life, and I call it a day. But the world is so ridiculously fleshed out. Shadow Isles, Ionia, Bilgewater, everything we have seen in Arcane. There is so much personality in this world. You honestly want this game to succeed. You want this game just to be made so you can experience the world. Because it is gonna be absolutely amazing.
It's been finished for quite a few years now. In fact, the world of Riot's MMO is in such a good state. They already have the continents, the zones, the cultures, and the races. And to a lesser degree, every zone already has its own storyline.
There's gonna be a lot of photos.
Unless you follow the lore of League of
by
Legends,
the way,
you wouldn't know about this. And that's why I decided to make this video. I want to show you all...
I mean, look at this. It's not just good, this is amazing if this is potentially what we're actually gonna see.
all the zones we are going to see in the MMO and what sorts of quests we are going to do there. So, for the purpose of this video, I will assume you have no idea what League of Legends is about. You have no idea what you...
It's about hot women, Star Guardians, and a lot of Ahri skins. That's what League of Legends is truly all about, honestly.
universe is about, but you like MMOs, your hairline is receding, and you have a crippling fear of Nintendo 64 controllers.
My hairline is lush as fuck.
To which I might add, why do you think I'm wearing hats? But now, without further ado, let's have a look at all the zones in Riot's MMO. This is Runeterra, the world of League of Legends. Right now, the world is separated into 10 main...
Everyone wants to see Shurima, Ionia, Shadow Islands, and... Well, Piltover and Zaun we have actually already seen, but still. Well, Bilgewater we already kinda know.
regions. But these 10 regions don't cover all the land on the map, so there are some mini-zones in between them. And...
Imagine you log in, you pick Noxus as your faction, and you go to see Mommy LeBlanc. Boys, a man can dream.
And the lore already revealed that there is gonna be another continent further to the east. That definitely sounds like a future expansion to me. In fact, it would be foolish to release all of these regions at launch. You can easily turn half of these into separate expansions.
They can also just make it like small zones. For example, you can see, you only get to explore 1/10 of Demacia at the start, or 1/10 of Noxus. And, after expansions, they just add new zones. I don't think that's a problem. If you make it like, for example, from Shurima, you just see, for example, this part at the start. It's completely valid, by the way.
And because a lot of people already know and love these regions, the hype behind these expansions would be big. With that said, I know a lot of you would like to play as Shurimans or Ionians.
Told you. I told you. He forgot Shadow Isles. Eve is special, let's just put it like that.
Cursing me for suggesting that these would be expansions. But the lore can justify giving you these nations as playable races without having their regions. I'll show you how Riot can pull this off in a bit. First, let's talk about the regions Riot's MMO has to start with. The Northern
Demacia and Noxus,
this
obviously.
entire continent is called Valoran. Not Valorant, Valoran. And this is where the absolute core of this world is. The two main regions here are Demacia and Noxus. They are the two big rivals equivalent to the Horde and the Alliance.
You know what's a fun fact about League of Legends? At the start, Demacians were the good guys, and Noxus was flat out the bad guys. But now it's pretty much like Noxus is honestly the good guys, because admittedly, it's hard to call them the good guys because they're essentially like communists, where the strongest communist gets to rule them all, and Noxus is just like kind of a bunch of bigots. It's really strange how it is, honestly, nowadays. But previously, Demacia were the good guys, and Noxus were the kind of bad guys. But as the lore got fleshed out, it's like it's pretty gray, which is actually amazing.
While I would like to say that Demacia is your classic normie human region, it's not really true. Runeterra doesn't really have a normal place. There is something cool happening in every region. And Demacia has racism. Okay, maybe not racism, because Demacia doesn't mind Yordles or Minotaurs, but they really hate mages.
That looks...
It's because in the past, their rivals almost annihilated half of the world using magic.
Good times.
And so Demacia was built inside a magic-absorbing forest. Therefore, Demacia is a really cool place where you can hide from magic. When it comes to the visuals of the zone, you can see a lot of lush fields, it is surrounded by mountains, but the iconic part of Demacia are the buildings.
Their buildings and stuff is supposed to be made from mage stone or whatever it's called, and that is supposed to also absorb magic.
They are made of petricite, which is a combination of stone and the magic-absorbing wood.
Yep.
Because these ancient...
I had no idea wood was involved.
Magic-absorbing trees were grey, all the buildings have a marble-like appearance. And yes, given what material they are using, all the buildings in Demacia also absorb magic. So should a mage...
And Silas still spits on that.
...visit this region, let's just say it's gonna be a painful experience. On top of this, let's not forget that Demacians can weaponize petricite. They can turn it into petricite steel, which gives you your classic anti-magic weapons, and you can sculpt petricite constructs which wake up after absorbing magic.
How does
Simply
that make
said,
sense?
These guys just really don't like magic. The irony is, they've been absorbing it for years now. And this is where the story would kick in. You see, the Demacians are so afraid of magic, they founded the Mage Seeker Order. This is an order of people who hunt mages, they throw them into prison, and they torture them until their body gives up on magic. So yes, being a mage is a crime in Demacia. The thing is, people still get naturally born with magical abilities. You can't stop it from happening.
Sucks to be you, I guess.
So not only are there mages hiding in the royal court, right now there is a mage civil war happening in Demacia, where mages and people who don't hate mages rise up.
I haven't watched Necred for like 2 months, so I'm not filled in on this.
Up to fight for moral rights. So should we do some quests in this zone? This is gonna be the core story. Mages trying to overthrow racist leadership following old laws. So the main enemy NPCs might be mages and witches. But I know what you're thinking now, and don't worry. There will be plenty of boars to
Silas
kill here
vs. Gotten.
Or at least there are loads of wolves here, as well as stags. And we can't forget the iconic Demacian raptors. But further to the south, we might find some crag beasts, tiny woolly elephants, and yes, of course in the Argent Mountains there are also dragons. Loads and loads of dragons.
Shyvana.
But that's about it for Demacia. Fun fact, the capital city of Demacia is called the Great City of Demacia.
Well, obviously, Demacians are kind of original. I mean, what did you honestly expect?
Sounds dumb, but Runeterra was not the first one to come up with this. But thankfully, the other regions are a bit more creative with their names. So now...
Oh, actually, true. Lordaeron and the city of Lord... Yeah, okay, I see that.
Now, let's move away from the normie region, and let's have a look at the badass region.
Noxus.
If you're planning on playing a war...
I mean, look at their city. I mean, just look at that city. That is so good. It's not a city. It's a literal fortress. Where something extremely bad is underneath. Like Mordekaiser. And Mommy LeBlanc is there also. And Mommy Katarina is also there. There's a lot of mommies in Noxus, if you understand what I mean.
If you're planning on playing a warrior with oversized weapons and overcompensating lush hair...
Warriors are kinda lame. Playing a warrior should be considered the mental illness in a fantasy setting. Like, you have all these possibilities and you choose to play a warrior. At least be a magic warrior, I mean.
This is the region for you. This place actually has a long and badass history, but we really don't have the time to explain it now. So just know that originally it was built by the most badass warrior in the history of Runeterra. This motherfucker literally died on a mountain of corpses. And after he died, he was too angry to stay dead, so he just became the god of the underworld. When this guy lived, he built the Immortal Bastion, which is to this day the largest structure on the entirety of Runeterra. And currently he is banished underneath the Immortal Bastion, but only a few people know about it. So that's a future raid boss. Anyway, the Immortal Bastion is the capital city of the Noxian Empire, with Noxus being one of the most brutal nations in Runeterra. It is brutal.
In Noxus, the only thing that matters is strength. If you're stronger than someone, congratulations, you pretty much own their stuff.
Because the nation is surrounded by rocky earth. It is hard to grow plants here. So Noxians are forced into conquering surrounding land for resources to survive. That's why when you go to the map, you can notice that the Noxian territory is all over the place. It's because these are all the places Noxus has already conquered.
Admittedly, this part of world building makes absolutely no sense, because if we look at it, yeah, okay. So, if you're surrounded by rock and you can't grow anything, so here's a thing called the sea, and it usually has food in it. Here's like a bunch of greenish, bluish, whatever, yellowish plains. Here's a bunch of yellowish plains, and here's a bunch of rocks. Can you guess what Noxus decided to take first?
Notice that the Noxian territory is all over the...
Yeah, the useless rocks they already have a lot of. And second of all, like, look at this. Look at how much of the coastline you have. They should not have a problem like that anymore. But admittedly, the culture doesn't change. But yeah, world building wise, this is a little bit questionable how Noxus actually became Noxus.
...the place. It's because these are all the places Noxus has already conquered. Although, when I say it like that, you may imagine Noxus brutally raiding everything. But that's not true. They like to absorb the surrounding nations into their empire. After all, it's just more human resources.
The only blue-haired woman you are allowed to look at, boys, by the way.
Most of the time, they only remove the royalty and they let the leaderless people join their empire. And that's because Noxus values strength above all. And rulers tend to not be good fighters. This is what you can see in the After Victory cinematic. They kill the king because he was weak and let everyone else join them. Fun fact, conquering nations is so iconic for Noxus they have their own saying. Kill them until they are family. So when it comes to the quests in Noxus, it is most likely going to be helping the Empire expand its territory. Although, this region has its own unique enemies too. Inside the Immortal Bastion, there is a cult known as the Black Rose. This cult is connected to the darkest of magics. So be ready to fight Hemomancers, witches...
Hemomancers are blood users, if I was not mistaken.
...demons, and the Great.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be a lot of demons in Noxus. Like, Swain pretty much has a demon grafted on himself. Like, let's be real, and he's the leader of the Noxians.
A legion, which is an army of soldiers revived with blood magic to fight for the Empire again.
Good times.
And when it comes to collecting 10 bear asses, here we have the native Drakehounds and Basilisks. Now, while Noxus and Demacia are the main rivals here, both of them are also constantly repelling raids from the north. So now, let's have a look at the Freljord. Just like pretty much any region on Runeterra, Freljord has a long history. But for the purpose of this video, just know that the maddening old gods known as the Watchers of the Void, who want to devour the entire reality only because it keeps waking them up, once tried to breach into reality here. They almost succeeded because they tricked the Ice Witch Lysandra into helping them. Fortunately, she realized how wrong she was, and she managed to freeze half of the kingdom with the Watchers still beneath them. So these days, the Ice Witch is the only person holding back the end of reality by keeping the Watchers frozen.
And she is evil. She is still considered pretty evil. Well, she is evil, because she wanted to do it for personal gain at the start. Oh, but then understood it's bad.
So at some point in the future, you bet one of these woken up frozen Watchers is gonna be a raid boss. Now, when it comes to the NPCs, this is where things get diverse. First of all, remember that the Freljord is brutally cruel. Everything is frozen, and survival...
There's no way you start in Freljord if you actually... Yeah, there's no way you can start in Freljord.
...is everything. So the first enemy here would be the wildlife. From Rhymefangs to Yetis to Druvasks to Elnuks to Mammoths to the worst of them all, Poros. Next we are going to fight the Freljordians themselves. There are three main tribes here. The Avarosans, who are quite peaceful, the Winter's Claw, who are quite brutal, and the Frostguard, Lysandra's followers who hold back the Watchers. And let me tell you, these guys have some badass armor. Among the notable tribes there are also...
This looks so badass, by the way. Literally. Again, well, in League of Legends, everything is unique and looks badass nowadays, so this should not exactly be, like, too surprising.
The Ursine, which are shamans who worship the Volibear, the primal god of the wild who slowly turns his worshippers into twisted animalistic monstrosities.
Nice.
Speaking of which, yes, there are also the primal gods of Freljord. And finally, we need to talk about the Iceborn. When the Watchers tried to arrive here, they tainted the ice around them. This special ice is called the True Ice. And it is so dangerous, you literally die if you touch it. However, the Watchers also tainted some people, giving them the ability to touch the ice. It is still extremely painful for them to hold a true ice weapon, but at least they can survive it. These people are known as the Iceborn. But people were not...
Oh yeah, and that's probably kind of a little bit too overpowered to just allow as a faction or whatever instantaneously.
the only things that were tainted.
But the problem with making an MMO like this is the fact that, you know, there's gonna be people who want to be starting Freljord, there's gonna be people who want to start on the Shadow Islands, and technically all of these sides are against each other, more or less. Obviously, the world of League of Legends does have politics, trade, and whatnot. So, you know, not necessarily all our enemies. If you saw Arcane, for example, you know that Piltover is not exactly like in the worst relationships with Noxus, I guess. But yeah, the making this game will be extremely hard to a degree.
There are also ice trolls, some of whom are also Iceborn. To be honest, these guys were made to have their own dungeon. But there are also some animals that were twisted by the Watchers. And Lysandra is even twisting some beings herself to make them serve her. So overall, Freljord is gonna have a lot of cool warriors, shamans, and horrors.
Imagine having cool shamans in your game. Yeah, that would be insane.
So these would be the 3 regions on the main continent. But this place is actually so big it can easily make the base world of the game. Especially since there are a bunch of smaller regions in between them. There is Nokmerge full of witches, Argent Mountains with their dragons, Tokgol with void monsters, Dalamor Plains with him, and so much more. But from here, you can cleverly set up the expansions because of how well everything is interconnected. So now, let's have a look at the continent to the east called
The Weeb Dream, Ionia, where every weeb can wield the katana, where every weeb must wield the katana. It is absolute bliss.
Ionia. Ionia has a very close connection to Noxus. You can only guess why. It's because Noxians once tried to conquer it all during an event simply called the Invasion of Ionia. This was a horrible war full of using children as soldiers because Noxians thought Ionians wouldn't fight back against children. And chemical weapons. Lots and lots of chemical weapons. Speaking of which, remember Singed from Arcane? He's the guy who chemically devastated Ionia. Eventually, Nox...
You know, it happens, kinda.
failed, but they kept their small controlled territories. So the first quest here could be simply boarding a ship, sailing over, and exploring the place for the Noxian Empire. Now, when it comes to Ionia...
Admittedly, okay, so how does this work? Imagine an expansion, and it's a because you would always have to have these two sides that are battling, unless everyone's kind of friendly and in neutral relationships. But it would be really hard to make an expansion where, you know, for example, for some reason this is happening. Where is it happening in the desert? Well, if you're from Elfjord, why the fuck would you ever go to a desert? You know, that would be the real challenge of this game.
Ionia itself, the place gets mystical. Everything here is alive and connected to the spirit of nature. And I mean everything, from the animals to the people to the buildings. Everything is alive. So if you anger Mother Nature, you're...
That means your pocket pussy finally can be officially your girlfriend. Your hand is already alive, but now it's double alive because you're in Ionia. Yeah. Think about where you stick it in, my boy, because maybe it's gonna be bad.
Your house can twist and strangle you in your sleep. So you can only imagine how Mother Nature fought against Noxians. Usually a river came alive to drown them. That's why all the buildings here look like they were woven from wood. It's because they were. With nature magic, people let nature build their houses. It also means that sometimes your house can just walk away. When it comes to the NPCs here, obviously there is gonna be a lot of nature spirits. And a lot more of simply mystical animals.
I'm imagining in MMO terms how actually wild this is. This is not just wild, it's absolute insanity.
From giant flying tigers to the never-ending story. But be ready to also face local Ionians, blade masters, shadow cultists, murderers, and ninjas. Both good, bad, and the in-between. But finally, there is also one more enemy that we could face. The furries. That's right.
He knows what's up. He knows who the true enemies are. Admittedly, you know, we should kill most furries, but I mean, like, yeah, I think I'm gonna keep this one, you know? For some reason, I feel inclined to keep her, and maybe just slightly marry or something like that. You know, not too much, I'm not a furry degenerate at the end of the day, but, you know, a little bit of marriage never hurt anyone, you know what I'm saying?
This race is known as Demacia. They are half humans and half magical animals.
Literally
and
every
yes,
scaly
canonically,
ever.
the species was born in exactly the way you are thinking. But to be fair, the Vastaya are quite cool and they are definitely gonna be a playable race. Just like Yordles, who also like Ionia a lot. Lastly, after Noxians ravaged Mother Nature, demons started occupying all the places filled with misery and doubt. So that's gonna be a nice bonus enemy. So yes, the exploration of Ionia and the raid on the Shadow Order could be a really cool first expansion. But it's definitely not Riot's only option, because we can also go south to Piltover and Zone. These are the ones people will know about, simply because
Arcane was amazing.
Plays. Piltover and Zone are two massive cities located one above the other. And they are so massive they could easily be turned into their own playable zones. They are both focusing on futuristic technology powered up.
I really hate when an MMO turns a city into a zone. I really kind of hate it because it's just too much walking, too much talking, too much. I have never seen a game that actually turns a city into a real decent playable zone. I have never once played that, you know, in MMO sense.
By magic of the Hextech gemstones. Using this magic, they can power up anything from guns to augmented limbs to vehicles.
And teleportation networks, by the way, so you won't have to worry about fast travel. In fact, fast travel that is lore friendly.
Visually, it is simply futuristic Victorian.
Oh, by the way, this I think is the fast travel thing. This is what beams me up, Scotty.
Era. And unfortunately, there wouldn't be much of enemy variety. We would likely fight the rich houses of Piltover and their deadly assassins, with the occasional thief on the streets, corrupt wardens, and the occasional rogue steam golem. But things get a bit more interesting in the undercity known as Zone.
Zon is insane, boys. I mean, like, damn.
Zone is the dirty underbelly covered in thick, toxic smoke. Because the majority of people are poor here, they developed a cheaper alternative to Hextech called Chemtech. This artificial green stuff can power up cheaper limb replacements, as well as highly unstable weaponry. Zone is also controlled by the Chem Barons, which are obviously gonna be the main enemy here.
Look at this. Admittedly, that's a playable character.
But on the side, we may also meet some chemical mutants, unstable constructs, as well as some mass murderers and people who hunt down mass murderers.
Good times.
And funnily enough, at the very bottom of Zone
There's no way this game is not an absolute 10 out of 10 banger, by the way.
itself, there are the hidden ruins of an ancient city full of traps. That is obviously gonna be a cool dungeon. So yes, there is not much more that I can add
And there should be the void.
here. Piltover and Zone were simply explored in Arcane. So if you like the series, you are gonna like this place. From here, we can travel further south to Shurima. Shurima used to be a massive empire that ruled the world. But after the emperor got betrayed by his best friend, the entire empire collapsed. This region is a
He's talking about Zerat, by the way, an energy being. Pretty good stuff.
massive desert with the occasional city near a river. In the center of the region, there is the Sun Disk, a colossal piece of star metal that has the power to
Imagine how cool it would be questing in Shurima, and pretty much from anywhere in the zone, you can see the sun disk. That would be absolutely insane.
reflect celestial magic. The Shurimans use this celestial magic to turn their best soldiers into the Ascended, also known as the Golden God Warriors. However, these God Warriors wouldn't make a great enemy here. That's because after the Emperor had died, the Ascended started fighting for leadership. And slowly, after learning how to use blood magic to gain the edge, they morphed their own bodies and became the Darkin. Twisted, blood-frenzied monsters that would certainly make really cool raid bosses. Besides this ancient evil, Shurima is also full of its own animals, raiders, dune scavengers, and on top of all of that, void creatures.
You can just make so many amazing looking things here. It's insane. This is gonna be the first MMO in the history of ever where the art team will not finish with, a year or two left left in the development time budget. It's gonna be insane. You can get so much out of this. You like the art styles, the lore, the stories, the everything, the classes. It's gonna be absolutely great. This is gonna be the WoW killer. There's no doubt. Because Riot doesn't fuck around, When Arcane came out, everyone, including your dead grandma, knew that it's coming out and it's gonna be an absolute 10 out of 10 fiery banger.
That's because to the south, there used to be a kingdom known as Icathia that wanted to destroy the Shuriman Empire. So, they asked the Watchers for help.
Smart.
You can imagine how that went.
Yeah.
The Watchers sent through some void beasts that consumed Icathia and polluted Shurima to this day. To fight back the void, Shurima does have a lot of hidden tombs around with hidden god warrior weapons. Not to mention that Shurima also has a circle of time mages who are trying to freeze the void in time. Now, as I mentioned near the beginning of the video, even if
That is an easy class, by the way, Time Mage. Admittedly, how do you make a Time Mage not overpowered or underpowered? No clue. But that's Riot's problem, honestly, I would say.
Shurima becomes an expansion, they can still easily make Shurimans a playable race because they are already connected to Noxus. As you can see, of course, Noxians already conquered part of Shurima. So some Shurimans are fighting for Noxus. Also, as a cool fact, for those of you who liked Arcane, Hex Crystals are harvested in Shurima. That's why a Shurima expansion would be a great follow-up to Piltover and Zone. And again, that's why
I had no idea.
Riot can easily turn only the northern continent into the base world. Anyway, going west from...
I think, man, it's so hard to actually make it. What are going to be the playable factions? What are actually going to be the classes? You can have your, basic warriors, mages, and rogues, sure, but what's going to be the advanced things? It's going to be so absolutely insane. And also, if you make something like a time mage, doesn't that just limit you to one region of the, one faction of the game? Things like that. It's a bit insane, honestly. It's a bit insane.
From Shurima, we arrive...
Oh, you know what, actually? An easy way to solve all of these problems about classes and whatnot would be the idea that you are a mercenary or something like that. You start off there, then you get abducted, blah blah blah. The classical story that you end up somewhere far, far away from where you started. That would be an easy way to explain almost everything, I feel.
At Mount Targon. This place is incredibly unique. First of all, this mountain is not natural. It was literally pulled up from the ground by celestial gods. And that's because this place serves as a portal to the celestial realm, also known as Targon Prime. Now, because this mountain was pulled up, it also has some unique features. For example, you may find frozen lakes frozen horizontally on the mountain. And the very peak of the mountain is special too. Should a mortal reach the peak despite the brutal climate and the deadly wildlife, either they die from exhaustion, or the celestial gods deem them worthy and they become an ascended aspect. There is aspect of war, aspect of the sun, aspect of the moon, aspect of the twilight, aspect of the guardian, and so on. Simply said, after people reach the peak, they become some of the strongest beings on the entire planet. So of course...
Okay, that sounds more like a power-up than an actual raid, though. And obviously you can't have a faction there, because that's like demigods.
The mountain is full of people who worship the celestial demigods. And I speculate this is where we could get a lot of cool armor sets. There are the Solari, who are devoted to the aspect of the sun. Then there are their rivals, the Lunari, who are devoted to the aspect of the moon. But also the tribe I assume will become a playable class, the Warriors of Rakor. Of course, besides just humans, Targon also has all sorts of furry Vastaya. Near the bottom of the mountain, you may notice that the mountain is alive. But also there are Stellarcorns, a variety of mind-bending creatures, and...
Okay, the creature thing is also not actually a problem. It doesn't really matter if, in the lore it has been established that this and that exists in these and those places. It completely doesn't matter. Because you can obviously just add, maybe not the biggest creatures, but maybe not the most iconic creatures necessarily, to pretty much almost anywhere you want, and you can call it a day, and it's absolutely fine. So, the creatures that the Necrit is naming, it's not necessarily the beginning and the end of everything that you actually see in those zones. It's just, a couple of things that are pretty iconic and already established, I would say.
Loads and loads of dragons. Speaking of which, remember that this place is linked to the Celestial Realm. So this is where we may also meet the star-forging celestial dragon Aurelian Soul,
Nice.
as well as all sorts of other celestial beings. A lot of these would make for interesting bosses. In fact, the ascension of Mount Targon would be a really cool raid. Next, on the other side of Shurima,
I think it would be a waste to make Mount Targon just into one single raid, not a zone where you can have multiple raids and, open field encounters and things like that.
there is Ishtal. This is a special place where people are mastering the elemental magic. They are using it for everything. Fishing, smithing, walking.
Okay, I don't know a lot about Ishtal, but is this the place where Mommy Kiana is gonna crush my skull like a watermelon? I hope it is.
And this place is definitely gonna be saved for an expansion. Basically, remember when Icathian asked the Watchers for help? And then that happened. Ishtal was their neighbor, and after I saw the void...
Look at those thighs. Death has never been sweeter. The cold embrace of death is now the warm embrace of absolute unabided love.
devour an entire kingdom. They believed the void would soon devour the entire world. So, using their elemental magic, Ishtal built massive walls of plants around their entire region, isolating themselves from the rest of the world. For 3,500 years, Ishtal stayed isolated, believing that the world outside of their walls was devoured by the void. But now, very recently, some mages found out that the world outside is completely fine. So now, the Ishtal mages are slowly revealing themselves. To be honest, Ishtal is the most underdeveloped region in...
It's the newest. I don't even know too much about it. Except, you know, Mommy, please crush my skull like a watermelon. Thank you very much. I love you.
Runeterra. We know the region has a lot of hunting Vastaya, deadly plants, and some elemental dragons. But most of the region is still a mystery to us. So at least here, Riot will have the freedom to try something new. But now, we leave the main continent to visit the last two regions. First of all, there is Bilgewater. If you like pirate adventures, this is gonna be your place. This is where we are going to explore in...
I think Bilgewater, ironically, is probably the most ununique place ever, because it's literally like just a Terramore, and you know, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's probably the most ununique place. Admittedly, it does have things like Tom Kenshin Pike, which is cool, but, you know, it's kind of just, you know, your classical piratey, spiritual-esque type of place with a lot of outlaws. It's not necessarily the most interesting place.
And gambling dens, even some local temples worshipping the god of motion.
Oh yeah, that's actually true.
Here we are going to fight pirates and sea monsters, sea witches, sea Vastaya, maybe some demons.
Yep.
And possibly we'll side with Sarah Fortune to fight the king of the pirates, Gangplank. But there's a lot more here. Last year, Riot released their RPG, which was set in Bilgewater. So not only can we already explore this place in detail, but it even has a monster journal. And at a quick glance, you can already see some really cool bosses too. However, this place is also linked to the last place I want to show you today.
You know what I don't like, honestly, about places like this? For example, look at this. He's at the top of a mountain, and even the mountain, for some fucking stupid reason, has been fashioned into the front part of a goddamn boat. Why? Don't fucking know. I hate details like this, essentially. Like, I understand your theme is pirates, but not everything needs to resemble a ship, you know? Not everything needs to be piratey. You know what's the most pirate thing about pirates? Is the fact that they don't exactly give a fuck. They just do stuff and call it a day.
Linked to the last place I want to show you today. The Shadow Isles. See, every year the horrors of the Shadow Isles lurk out. And Bilgewater just happens to be the closest place. So every year, Bilgewater is fighting the undead. Once upon a time, the Shadow Isles used to be the Blessed Isles, a rich place full of advanced magic. Long story short, there was a young asshole king who wanted to revive his dead queen, and in the process he accidentally released dark necromantic magic. This magic destroyed...
I mean, it happens. Are you... What? Are you just not gonna simp for the right girl? I mean, like, impossible.
The island and made it home for undeath. In the lore, this event is called the Ruination. And because the RPG is called The Ruined King, it may not be a surprise to you that you also get to explore the Shadow Isles there. And there they have anything you can imagine. Undead horrors creeping everywhere. And should we ever venture into these islands, I have no idea whom we're going to fight. The Ruined King who caused all of this is banished elsewhere.
Yeah, he's pretty much done. Thresh is also not actually dead anymore. Well, admittedly, I think there's a bunch of things that you could just, you know, put there. I think Alessandra is still there.
Who siphoned his magic after he was banished, also left the Isles. And even Hecarim, the most brutal soldier of them all, is currently around Demacia. So the Shadow Isles don't currently have a main baddie. So
It
this is
doesn't
where
matter.
Riot could push forward some of the side characters. Now, even though these have all been the regions that are currently set up on Runeterra, Riot has already confirmed that there is a new continent further to the east. Currently,
Wait, which part is the east? Wait, no, there's islands on the east. Well, there are currently islands on the east. Admittedly, that's the thing about these worlds. Even in World of Warcraft, they stated that, wait, there's still more stuff. And admittedly, you know what? I understand that you run out of places and, things to do as time progresses. I think it's kind of cheap when you just say, well, there's actually a whole continent to the, left side of you. It's as big as this one. Yeah, you just literally never knew about it. No one ever talked about it. And the reason why is because it's actually on a turtle's back and surrounded by mist and stuff. Yeah, that's dumb. I just don't like that. I think it's a cheap way to do things.
it is planned to be revealed in the upcoming Ruination novel. And so far, we know that this new continent is where the ruined King Viego is from, and this is also where he was banished at the end of his story. All we know about that place is that it is quite mystical, but there are yet more dragons here,
Obviously.
and in fact, Kamavor, which is the ruined king's nation, has a lot of draconic armor. So should Riot run out of places to explore, don't worry, they can always make up more. But
Again, I don't want that. That feels cheap.
that's all I wanted to show you today. As
Is it?
someone who's been following the lore of League of Legends from the very beginning,
I think Necrid is the only guy you should ever trust when it comes to League of Legends lore. If he doesn't know it, I don't think anyone knows it.
I can tell you, I'm very confident the setting of Riot's MMO is gonna be great.
Yeah.
Their incredible writers have been preparing the world for years now. And now, it's time to harvest the fruit.
And can you imagine the fact that how actually the lore started? The lore was so different. At first, League of Legends had summoners. You were literally a summoner who controlled the hero in the battlefield and empowered it. Yeah, it was pretty wild, and it was pretty dumb. Thankfully, they changed the lore. But yeah, Riot's MMO is most likely going to be absolutely mind-shakingly amazing. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Subscribe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.